I'm here to disagree with the narrative that I'm seeing come out after the Badgers and their River Falls scrimmage. A lot of people are worried. I'm going to tell you why maybe you just need to hold up 1 second on that. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. I'm your host, Ryan Herring, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Welcome to the show. Appreciate you so much. Let's talk some hoops. Let's talk some basketball. So the Badgers had a scrimmage that everyone was able to see on BTN Plus against UW River Falls. There was one point in the game where UW River Falls was within 2 points, 47-45. And people are a little stressed. People are a little worried. Bunch of quick things I want to get to with this show, with my reaction to that. The first is it's a scrimmage. It's a glorified practice. It's just some caution to any type of takes, good or bad, coming out of this. It's a scrimmage. It's a glorified practice. That doesn't mean it means nothing. I've always said react, but react proportionately, right? Like every data point means something. Nothing means nothing. And you shouldn't be up to UW River Falls if you're a real Big Ten team, right? Also, don't overreact. So I want to start with this narrative that I've seen out there. And people, I think it's just looking at this game the wrong way. This is from, and I'm not picking on this guy. I'm going to put this up. Everybody knows who Zach Halpern is. He runs a really good podcast with Jesse Temple. I'm just using his tweet because I got this from a lot of people. And his tweet was the Badgers took more than 25 threes 4 times last year. 2 of those gets run overtime. They are 8 for 25 from the outside tonight against a team they should be crushing inside. So the narrative here is obviously, why aren't they just feeding the ball inside? They can crush this team. Why do they continue to jack up shots on a night where they're not shooting very well? It's because this game doesn't matter. And again, like, this is not me trying to take apart Halpern's take whatsoever. That could be the right take. Other people had this take, though, and send it to me, which is why I'm just putting it up here, because I think people are looking at that the wrong way. Because this year, this team, and we've talked about it on the show, they are going to live and die by the three. They have to. They are going to live and die by the three. That's what this team is going to be built around. Crowell inside and then shooters around him. So they went into this game. They could obviously have pounded the ball inside whenever they wanted to, but how does that help them? That doesn't help the team this year because they're not going to win that way this year. Like how does feeding Crowell 25 times against a 6'9" Division III center help you throughout the year? It doesn't. They could have done it all game, and I guess fans would be happy about it, but it doesn't help the team because that's not how they're going to have to win this year. They're going to have to win this year by shooting shots because that's what this team is built around. It's built around Blackwell shooting 40-something% last year, Tanjay coming in, Amos coming in. It's built around Klesmit being a shooter. Crowell can shoot. Winter can shoot. Like, all these people can shoot. This offense is built around, let's find space. Let's take shots. Let's get up threes because that's the more efficient way to play basketball. An open three is more efficient than a contested two. That's been proven. People can hate the NBA for its space and the way it's gone ISO ball and spacing and shooting threes, but they've done that for a reason because it's smarter basketball. The contested shot at the rim is a less efficient shot than the open corner three. That's just what it is. So it's interesting to me. Like, I think the positive out of this game, if you look at it, is Gard is embracing more efficient basketball. And the players talked about it. We're going to shoot threes this year. We are going to shoot threes this year. That's a good thing. Like, yes, get shots up. You have to shoot threes to win games with this team. Tyler Wall's gone. You're going to be less reliant on the post play. And they just didn't hit shots. They just didn't hit shots against UW River Falls. They got a lot of open looks. That should be the encouraging part. Now, there's things here that are not great as well. I'm going to get into them. And then also, again, caveat it with this is a scrimmage game. It's a glorified practice. The rotations are all over the place. He clearly is still messing with things. Like, it's a glorified practice. But again, the idea that we should just been pounding it inside against River Falls, I completely disagree with, because that's not the offense they're going to have to run this year. They're going to get the ball to Crowell. They're going to let teams pick their poison a little bit. You either double Crowell, and then he's going to try to find an open shooter, or you let Crowell go to work. That's what this offense is. It's going to be a lot of motion and movement to find open shooters. And again, listen, the starting group, Crowell was 0 for 4 on threes. John Blackwell was 1 for 5. Tanjay was 1 for 7. Klesmit was 0 for 3. They just didn't shoot well. And there's going to be more games this year where that happens, and we're going to lose those games. This team is going to be very much live by 3, die by 3. But we already knew that. And the fact that you're seeing that offense put into motion, I think is encouraging because that's embracing modern basketball. That's embracing what this team has to be. And it may not work. They're going to have to shoot well to win games this year, but we already knew that. So the recipe is not just force feed Crowl. It can't be because that's not going to work. A couple comments here. Bo Dragon says, if you play like a game, doesn't matter. You are a fake team. It's a practice, Bo. Like, I disagree. Like, you don't benefit from feeding, and I love Bo, by the way, but you don't benefit from what do you get out of just bullying a Division III center and saying we're going to win this game by 30, but not actually work on our offense? Like, you have to get better, and you have to work on what you're going to run. Bo says, how does jacking up threes you don't care about make you better? I think you do care about them. Like, you have to shoot. You have to shoot threes with this roster. You have to. So a couple other big picture things. I thought so. Let's shift over to some stuff that I found. Well, like, what can you take out of a glorified scrimmage, right? I think you can take an idea of what they're trying to do offensively, which we're seeing spacing, we're seeing shooting threes. You can take that out of it. I think you can take some defensive stuff out of it. I think defensively was my biggest concern coming out of this game, quite frankly. Again, to me, it wasn't the offense. They got a lot of threes. That's what they want to do. They just didn't hit them. Sometimes it's literally as simple as that. Sometimes in baseball, you hit a lot of line drives to an outfielder. It doesn't mean the approach is wrong. It just means it didn't fall that night. Defensively, I had more concerns. I thought there was some bad pick and roll defense in this game, and that was an issue last year. And again, you're playing a team that shouldn't be able to exploit you that way. There was a play in the second half between McGee and Nolan Winter on a pick and roll, where McGee, I thought, didn't have enough ball pressure, got stuck on the pick and roll. Then Winter didn't wall up on the ball handler, allowed him to get all the way to the rim and finish at the rim with the layup. Can't do that, man. There was another play in the second half. I'm just looking at my notes here where between McGee and Klesmit, they had a pick and roll kind of dribble handoff situation. They just should have switched it. They switched multiple spots in this game, but it felt like they miscommunicated. And because of that, they got a layup with the left hand against Klesmit. Listen, those are defensive breakdowns that I think are big issues. And we saw that last year. That to me is the bigger worry in this game. You allowed UW River Falls to shoot 6 for 16 from 3. That's too high of a percentage. I thought perimeter defense, there were some issues. I thought pick and roll defense, there were still some issues. I thought there were some issues with dribble drive penetration, the ability to keep the ball out of the paint, which again was an issue last year. Now, some of this, it felt like we were playing with our foot a little bit. But to me, like the offensive stuff, Jan Volk said, looked like they didn't play very good defense. Yeah, especially in the first half. I thought the defense I thought the defense had some issues in the first half. Yeah, I agree with that. I 100% agree with that. I wrote it down as my biggest takeaway out of that. All right, we're going to take a quick break there. Come back a little bit, talk about some of the players that stood out to me. What did we see from Daniel Freitag? And potential rotation surprises this year. That's coming up next on a quick Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show over at 5 Hour Energy. And if you got to get a little energetic, which at times I always need that. You got to fuel your fandom a little bit. At times I need that. Go over to 5 Hour Energy. It takes a lot of energy to power through all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, agonizing overtimes, and a Big Ten basketball season. You need that energy to power through. That's why 5 Hour Energy is created. Stay on the fan. 5 Hour Energy shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel. Let's go. The energy shot made just for super fans like us, the fans who are first in the parking lot, last to leave. They see you. 5 Hour Energy sees you. For all those people trying to power through those tailgates, 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate, ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is long. Fuel your fandom with limited energy. Stand the fan 5 Hour Energy 5-pack or 12-pack. Available on 5hourenergy.com. Shipped nationwide. Today's episode also brought to you by our incredible friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel is incredible, fast, simple, easy to use. $5 bet gets you $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Parlay spreads, teasers, futures. It's all over there on FanDuel. Listen, great time to do it. World Series just wrapped up. Boy, the Yankees choked that one away. But NBA is rolling. College basketball is about to start. College football still in full swing. NFL, it's a great time to get started with your parlays over at FanDuel.com. Spice up your sports weekend with the biggest sports book, the best sports book, and the official sports book of the Locked On Podcast Network. This is where we go because they are legit and they are great and they are fast, simple, and easy to use. FanDuel.com. $5 bet gets you $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Always do it responsibly, but FanDuel.com. All right, let's jump back into this and talk about a few rotational things that I thought were interesting. And again, it's a scrimmage. Like, they were playing with rotation, but Daniel Freitag struggled a little bit. A guy that, do not let that take the shine off. Like, this is still a super high upside future guy, but like, he had some issues. He had 4 turnovers. He had one really tough one, or he just kind of threw a pass to nowhere, and then he tried to kind of hustle to make up for it, but that led to a fast break layup. It's still a work in progress with Freitag. We talked a little bit about that when we saw practice, like, hey, it may take a little bit, but you still see the athletic tools. You see the bounciness. He's going to be there. John Tonje, I thought, looked a lot like what we hoped he would, which is kind of a connecting piece, like a number 4. Didn't shoot well, but again, shooters got to shoot. He got 7 up. That's good. Like, you got to shoot shots on volume with this team. You have to. I thought he showed the ability to get to the rim, draw fouls, kind of a bigger physical guy. Point guard was interesting, right? They started Klesmit and Blackwell. We talked about that on Show with Rajiv. I think that's going to be the best lineup. I thought it would have Amos in it instead of Winter, but I think that lineup with Blackwell, Klesmit, Anje, your 4, and Stephen Carl, I think that's your best overall lineup, but it does lead to some issues of who's handling the ball, how are they going to get into shots. And I think that's where Stephen Crowell, you saw a lot in this game where they're going to go to Crowell and let him play and make from the post a little bit, for better and worse. I think there's some advantages he has there. Teams are going to have to potentially double him, and then he's going to find the open look. But I also don't think, and Justin has brought this up before, I don't think he's not really, really quick at times with the decision-making, which creates some problems. But that's part of not having a true point guard on the roster. Let me pull some of these other comments. Okay, let's see here. Jan Volk didn't block out very well. Yeah, there was a bunch of offensive rebounds. I think, like, some of that's rotational stuff. Like, they're still working on who's going to be out on the roster, but there's no excuse not to clean up the defensive glass. I agree. Football Club David, what is your expectation for the Badgers this season? It has to be low. I think they could be a tournament team. Like, this is not a great Badgers team. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying coming out of this. I'm more pushing back on the idea that they should have just gone into the post and dominated River Falls because they're bigger. I don't think that helps you in the season. I think if this team's going to win, they got to shoot threes, and they have to find efficient ways to get those shots within the context of their offense. And that context is going to be getting it to Crowell and then finding open shots or pushing in transition a little bit more to run to space, essentially. So I think it's a tournament team potentially. I think people are probably a little quick to bail on it right now. But there's some real issues too that this team is going to be exploited this year with, quite frankly. Let's see. T-Temp says, based on what we played, Big Ten tournament title game, beat a number 1 team a year ago. Yeah, do not take that 4 for granted. I think that Final 4 for granted. I'm misreading this. I'm sorry, T-Temp. But I think ultimately you're saying, yeah, like, and this is also what I've said. Gard got a 5 seed last year. Like, I think I'm surprised continually at the amount of angst among Badger basketball fans right now. But maybe that's me. Like, that's probably a me thing. Kedrick says, I think there are things to point out and worry about coming out of the exhibition, but it has nothing to do with the scoreboard. I agree. I 100% agree. Like, I think defense to me, I think pick and roll defense, I think playmaking at times. But I also think, like, you have to take this in the proper context, which it's one scrimmage where things are still being worked on. It's a glorified practice. And I don't want people to get too crazy. Jan Volk said maybe Ilver will be out. Ilver played well in the first half. I still think he's on the outside looking in. Here's the other thing I'll say really quick. I'm going to maybe finish on this. Trust the baseball card. And that's an old baseball analogy if you're a baseball fan. But there's players who will, for a month, slump. They'll hit 182 for a month, right? And they won't get on base. But the back of their baseball card over the course of a career says they're a 320 hitter. In other words, trust who they've been. You have a bunch of guys in this team that shot really poorly, but trust who they've been. Klesmit's a better shooter than this. Blackwell's a better shooter than this. Crowell's a better shooter than this. Tonje's a better shooter. They're going to shoot better, and that's going to make everything look better offensively. So I don't know. I that's where I'd be on that. Realist Real says, let's finish on this one. Is Gilmore still a thing? Gilmore played great in this game, and we've always said if he can find a shot, if Carter Gilmore can find a shot, he's going to find a role. I mean, he already has a role. He had 2 or 3 really nice passes. I put one on Twitter where he drove baseline, drew a couple people, kicked it out to Stephen Crowell for a 3. But he had one in the first half where he was on the left block and threw a cross-court pass to the right wing for a 3. Like, he has a couple really high-level passes for a forward, which I was impressed with. Like, there's some secondary playmaking ability there with Gilmore. If he can shoot, and he hit 3 in this game, if he can shoot, you got a real player. But the problem is he's never been able to consistently do that. And this is, again, where I'd go back to say, trust the baseball card. He's probably not going to be that guy because over the course of his career, he hasn't. I would not let one good shooting performance in a scrimmage change my opinion on that. But if he's able to do it, man, he's going to be a really good player if he can shoot the ball. That's never been in question. Jan Volk, yes, let's talk about this. If you want some positive Badger sports news, check out women's volleyball against Nebraska on Friday. Hell yeah. That is a huge matchup on Friday. Definitely shout out the women. One of the best programs in Madison. So yeah, definitely go check that out. Appreciate you, Jan. Last one here. Kedrick says Ilvor and Gilmore question marks are all just lumped into the backup four, which is now the biggest hole in the roster right now. Biggest hole in the roster right now is the backup four. That's a good question. I don't even know if you're asking the question, Kedrick. I think you're making a statement, but I'm turning that into a question. I think the biggest hole is a playmaking one. I think backup four is fine. I don't know. We should talk about that more later. Anyway, I got to wrap this up. I just wanted to quickly talk a little bit about the game, why I think some people are potentially overreacting a little bit. And I think I'll finish with it. I think a lot of people have already made up their minds on this. Ultimately, here's the bottom line. I think a lot of Badger fans have already made up their mind that they don't believe in this basketball program, this roster, and Greg Gard. And because of that, no matter what happens, they're going to view it through that lens, right? They're going to view it through, and we all have biases. I have biases, 100%. And I'm probably going to view it more through the lens of I'm not as down on the program. I think if you're looking for the truth, it's usually somewhere in between. And I hope this year, we're able to enjoy it because I put a pass from Gilmore on Twitter, and it's a really nice pass. And people are like, "Oh, it's terrible. Why is that?" I'm like, guys, we should be able to acknowledge a good play without destroying everything. So I hope we're able to enjoy it on Wisconsin as always. But I really, actually, one more comment here, man. I just can't get out of here. Kedrick says backup four is the biggest hole in my opinion. I don't think point guard debate matters a ton in the long run. I think it matters against teams that are going to apply pressure. I wonder at times how we're going to get into clean sets, trying to bring the ball up against maybe better defensive wings. Last year, we used Tyler Wall a lot as a secondary playmaker. We can't do it this year. But yeah, I think back and forth is an issue too. I expect Amos to kind of fill into that role. Hopefully he came in a little bit played. He's been dinged up a little bit, as you know, but yeah, I think they're both holes. I think there's a couple issues on this team. I still think there is a bit of a soft spot on the interior, like blocking shots, defensive glass. I think there's Big Ten teams that are going to body us a little bit. And that's also going to be a problem. So yeah, I agree with you. I think it's definitely an issue. Okay, let's roll there on Wisconsin. Appreciate you guys so much. Ton of content coming up this week. Let's go Badgers on Wisconsin.